Welcome to Old Iron Machine Works. In my previous video, it was bringing home this glass cabinet right there. And one thing I didn't show, quite some time ago, I came across a big air compressor on Craigslist, which is right there. And you can see the price. It was kind of nuts. It's a 325 Quincy with a 5-horse single-phase motor on it. So I figured right away the motor was worth the asking price, so it wasn't too big of a risk. It came with an 80-gallon tank, and it'll be switched over to this 120-gallon tank, which is a much better tank. The old original tank, the previous owner was moving around on some forks on a tractor, and it fell over and did a little damage to the tank. This original tank is a 165 psi working pressure, and 1985 is the year of the tank, and I would assume the compressors, within a couple years of that. This is me bringing the compressor to where I work. They're very great at letting me work on my projects after hours there. I should probably have them be the main sponsor of the video for allowing me to work on stuff there. Here's part of the damage right there. When it fell over, the legs are just welded to the bottom of the tank, and it just caved it in. These are not very heavy duty tanks at all. So I decided to just scrap the tank. I could fill it with water and pressure it up and try to straighten it up, but I chose not to. I already had a really nice, heavier pressure, 200 psi, 120 gallon vertical tank. So I chose to just switch everything over to it. Here I took the guard off and just making sure that the pulley's not rubbing anymore on the fins. This is the first run for this compressor for many years. Check the oil. The oil looked really nice. So I fired up. Everything ran real quiet. There's a few items that are broke off of it when it fell over. Right there, the inner stage relief valve, busted it right off. It's just a check valve, normally like 100 psi. It bent the inner stage cooler tube. Pressure, everything looked real nice, ran nice and quiet. Right there, that line fed to the main pressure switch that turned it on and off. It broke off. That's an automatic bleeder that bleeds the water out of the tank. Kind of flopping around a little bit, only because that one bent leg, it's kind of rocking on 3 feet. That's why it kind of a little wobble. This shows a little bit more on the little bit of wobble. That's just a matter of it kind of sitting on 3 legs, just kind of tipping back and forth a little bit. Now right there for the inner stage relief valve, all that does is protect that cooler line, or the line between the first stage and second stage, where if you have a first stage discharge valve go out, it'll keep from overpressure in that line.
These things are amazingly quiet. I think I did okay.
Here I'm getting everything changed over from the old tank, which is right there, which is an 80-gallon tank, to the 120-gallon vertical tank, and just kind of getting everything drilled and aligned. That's just a 1/4 inch by 1 inch flat bar, just kind of using it as a straight edge just to get my pulleys lined up. And in order to mount the motor and the compressor on the tank, I had to move the pulley out on the motor. And you can see right there, it's just a QD style hub, you know, so you just pull the bolts out and move the pulley out. You can see by the shiny spots how much I had to move it. And then just drill holes and bolt it down. Okay, here I'm getting into a little bit more damage from when the compressor fell over. This took a pretty good shot, and it actually busted the, these are silver soldered joints, and as you can see, it cracked them out. So what I did is I took a plate and just made a jig, and generally with things like this, you're better to just disassemble them and then get everything all prepped and cleaned up and go back together. But the lines, the inside lines were pretty bent up. Right where my finger is, it took a pretty good shot and it creased the line real bad. Yeah, I hate clamping the fins up in the vise, but sometimes it's kind of a little hard to hold it very well. And you know, the biggest thing is get the main tube back to being round, and the fins are pretty easy to deal with as far as straightening it out later. Here I just got a little tapered slug, a little slide hammer, and just kind of working it in. That thing about soft copper, be patient and you can manipulate it pretty good. As far as a little more history on this compressor, I'm going to read a part that the previous owner sent me, and it just says the air compressor was removed from the Hayward Executive Airport and supported an aircraft maintenance group for a company called Ameriflight. The company delivered hard copy bank information in Beechcraft King Airs in 1900s all over the country. The company dismantled the facility in early 2016. I know it doesn't look good on the fins doing that, but they were pretty boogered up, and the fins actually straighten out real easy. I just had to get that tube, get the creases out of the tube. I guess I should ask for you to excuse the mess on my workbench. Apparently right there I'm working on a turbo starter, which is made by TDI. I kind of pushed it to the side so I could work on my after-hour project. I am looking forward to getting my home shop all put together to the point where I can actually do a shop tour of the place, but I keep dragging stuff home and don't get a chance to get it in order. Well, I got the large creases out of the tubes now, and now I'm just got a little solid chunk of steel there clamped in the vise, using it as a little anvil, you know. And the tubes don't look too bad. from here, but they still have quite a few little ripples and dents in them. Just kind of truing them up the best I can. Alright, here's the two flanges that go on the interstage line, and just kind of pull them out of the blast cabinet. Now just polishing them, getting them cleaned up nice with the silver solder to get a good bond. If by any chance you notice that 3-shot chuck there, it's actually bolted to the bench. I bolted it down there about 18 years ago. I rebuilt a lot of natural gas compressor valves, and I use that just for the holding fixture for disassemble and assemble. Now they refer to this as silver soldering or silver brazing. Totally different material than your typical brazing, like what you would do on cast iron. The nice thing about the silver solder is it flows in the smallest little cracks. Most of your hydraulic fittings and stuff, are all silver soldered. Now the red glassy looking stuff here, that's just melted flux, and it just chips right off. Alright, I got the there's the line all bolted up nice and tight, and just made a couple new gaskets for it. Straightened out the upper support arm. I went ahead and made two new, that little L-shaped arm there. Just made a couple new ones for that. The other ones were a little on the flimsy side. So I just went ahead and bent up some 1-inch flat bar and bolted it on. Went ahead and pulled the side cover off of the crankcase to check it out and pulled a bearing, and it looked fantastic. Most of the wear generally is always going to be on the upper shell. That's where the load is, but as nice as that looked, I didn't see any reason to go any farther with that. There's my little scraping tool. One thing I did find is a whole bunch of little rust barnacles kind of stuck to the bottom of this thing, and the only way to really get it cleaned out is to scrape it all out and flush it out, and there's all the crap that came out of it, you know. So anyway, got it all cleaned up and nice new oil in it. Now here's the discharge line from the head to the tank. As you can see, pretty messed up. I was originally just gonna make a new one, and I thought, you know what, I don't have much money in this thing so far, so let's just go ahead and repair it. So I ended up just cutting the end off and just repairing that line, and it worked just fine. When I had the cover off the side of the crankcase, I was able to get up inside and look at the cylinder walls really good, and they look perfect. No issues with them whatsoever. And I really don't think there's a whole lot of time on this compressor, and generally the valves will go a very long time. So at this point, I'm just going to leave the valves alone. Here, just kind of deburn the inside of the tube, but I did want to mention these particular model Quincy's, they do have an oil pump. You know, it's a pressurized system to the bearings. And on this one, it does not have a spin-on filter. It just has the screen. The screen was taken out and cleaned up, and it actually looked pretty good. To be honest, I couldn't find the flaring tool for this size copper tubing, so I improvised. That's one nice thing about copper. It's so soft, you know, and especially a flared fitting. It doesn't take much to make a good seal, providing you don't get a crack in it. Alright, there I got the pressure switch in. I got the automatic dump for the tank, for the automatic drain. Plumbed it up with some stainless lines. Replaced the boogered up copper lines with stainless going up to the unloader valves. There's the line I repaired. at this point here, it's pretty much ready to put electricity to it. And here we're getting rid of the old junk tank.
Well, I got the blast cabinet in its new home underneath my carport, right before you go into the shop. The shop is underneath my house. Got the dust collector behind it, and got the new to me Quincy 325 air compressor sitting in place. It still needs cleaned up and a little coat of paint squirted on it, but I figured I'd get it all up and running first and get all the bugs out.
I'm going to actually have two compressors that will work this blast cabinet. This 325 with the single phase motor will be on all the time, and with a 120 gallon tank, I'll be able to blast, lots of small stuff. When I'm going after blasting larger stuff, this is a 370 that I have already got most of it rebuilt, and it'll be a later on video, but it'll have a 10 horse 3-phase motor that will fire up and feed to the same 120 gallon tank, and I'll only use it for bigger blasting jobs. This is some old clip, part of the rebuilding of this 370 compressor. Everything was perfect on it, but being that it was exposed to the weather, it did have one rust ring on the 6-inch cylinder, so I need to bore it and sleeve it. Rather than boring and going oversized, the piston's actually like brand new. It's just gonna get a really thin wall sleeve installed in the cylinder. And at the time, the company that I called to get the sleeve, they did not have the thickness I needed. Therefore, it just got covered up and pushed to the side, and time to get back on it. As always, it's appreciated very much for anybody that takes the time to check out my videos. And if you don't mind subscribing or hitting a thumbs up, greatly appreciated. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing.